All right, we're going to be looking at King Solomon here in just a moment. There's a couple of wrap-up things we want to do with Josiah. And then tomorrow night, if you want to read ahead and study, I would encourage you to do that. It helps the class because then you have something to share and something to add. And I certainly am in need of your contribution because it's the Lord's will that we teach one another whenever we assemble. That's not just reserved for one or two people. In the book of Colossians, every Christian is admonished to teach one another. We can do that in example, but we need to do it in word as well. Let's review what the armor is before we get on to wrapping up Josiah. So, did you get dressed this morning? Dressed for battle? What's the first?
Belt.
The belt of?
Truth.
Okay, next.
Breastplate of righteousness.
Breastplate of righteousness is in there. Shoes? What? Our feet shod with the readiness that comes with the gospel of peace.
Sword of the Spirit.
Shield of faith.
Sword of the Spirit.
Sword of the Spirit.
Helmet of salvation.
Helmet of salvation.
Pray.
And get in touch with headquarters. Pray. Pray in the Spirit. Okay. Hopefully that's getting, that repetition will get into your mind so that you will start putting on the full armor of God as you start your day. 2 Kings chapter 22. We're going to finish up Josiah. Actually, we're going to start with a verse in chapter 23. In the Hebrew Bible, the Kings and the Chronicles are one book. The Kings are one book. The Chronicles is one book. And the Hebrew Bible is divided into three sections. And one of the sections is the prophets, and the Kings and the Chronicles are in the prophets in the Hebrew Bible. So why would that be the case? Okay, the prophets, kings brought the word of God, and the prophets had access to the kings, that is to the good kings. The other kings tried to kill them, get rid of them. There were 41 kings that are in 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and 8 of those are commended. 8 out of 41. And the reason they're called prophets, one of the reasons is that this is God's view of history, what we're looking at, 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And all that matters to God and what he's got his eye on is what? As far as the kings are concerned. Their heart. Yeah, and their response to his word. Their response to his character and response to his word. And so there is scant information on what we would consider to be the most newsworthy kings. Like there are 8 verses on King Omri. And King Omri, if you've ever studied Western civilization in high school or college, is always mentioned. My Western Civ class in college had a pretty good section on King Omri. And most of you, who? What? And Solomon is mentioned, but probably not as much as King Omri is. But King Omri was a wicked king. And so God doesn't give him a lot of news. As far as his history, what?
You'd have to stay awake in Western Civ to remember.
Yes, that's right. You had to lift your feet off the floor. My dad used to say to stay awake in class. All right, so they're prophets because they're giving God's view of history. This is what God is doing. This is what God is concerned about. And that's often not what people are concerned about. You know, kings, as far as we're concerned, are about politics and about military strategy and about land acquisition and that kind of thing. How powerful they were, how much material they had, how great was their army. It doesn't matter to God. Okay, 2 Kings chapter 23. Look at this line here about King Josiah. 2 Kings 23. Let me see. I thought I had it marked, but I didn't mark it. Yeah, here we go. Verse 25. Neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him, who turned to the Lord as he did, with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his strength, in accordance with all the law of Moses. That's quite a statement, isn't it? There's not even a statement like that about King David. He was a man after God's own heart, the Bible does say that. But to that degree, that's quite a statement. Then look at in the first part of chapter 22 and verse 2. He did what was right, speaking of Josiah, in the eyes of the Lord, and walked in all his ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left. Those of you who've been in my classes before, does that phrase ring a bell? He didn't turn aside to the right or to the left.
You followed straight course. You didn't get
That's right.
caught up with any of the wicked king's dreams and didn't wayside of the Lord.
Refer to Jesus is not turning to the right, left, that he has no turning or.
Not sure what you have reference to. Man who puts his hand to the plow and looks back, Luke 9.
It talks about,
It's not.
it's talking about Jesus. There's no turning in him, no.
I think that's a hymn. I think that's what you have reference to. I don't think that phrase is in the Bible. Where's this phrase in the Bible? Not turning to the left or to the right. That's right. Good. Look at Deuteronomy 17 in the law. Remember, King Josiah was conversant with the law in his daily life. Proverbs 4:27. That I didn't know that. What does it say?
Do not turn to the right or the left. Keep your foot from evil.
Very good. Okay, I didn't know that it was somewhere else. This is Moses talking about the coming king and what God expects of him. Deuteronomy 17. And he says in the first paragraph that I'm going to appoint a king through you. I want you to make him a king after your own brethren. And I know you're going to want a king. So, yes, you'll have a king. Let's start at verse 16. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of horses for himself or make the people return to Egypt to get more of them. Did you read 1 Kings 1 through 11? How many of you read 1 Kings 1 through 11? What's this say about Solomon? Yeah. Solomon had horses running out the wazoo. He had stable after stable after stable, and they've uncovered some of those archaeologically, what they think to be Solomon's stables.
He even went to Egypt, though, and got horses too, didn't he say?
Yes, that's where he got them. Yeah. Okay. God have anything against horses? What's wrong with horses?
They're the fastest mode of transportation today.
Well, yes, and your power was measured in horses if you were a king. It meant they were attached to what? Chariots. Chariots was the modern tank of that day. It increased the might of your armies. And when you increase the might of your armies, you're increasing your trust in that rather than in the power of God to take care of you and your kingdom. And God didn't want the kings to trust in anything but him. Okay? So, power. He's talking about power there. Verse 17, he must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. Does that ring a bell from 1 Kings? Sure does, doesn't it? He must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. Now notice these lines. Here's where we are. When he takes the throne of his kingdom, he is to write for himself on a scroll a copy of this law taken from that of the priest who are Levites. King's to have his own Bible. And in that day, a scroll was very expensive to make in that day. You couldn't just stroll in to a Bible bookstore and pick up a Bible in that day. You couldn't get one over Amazon. So the king's to have his own copy, and it is to be with him, and he is to read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God and follow carefully all the words of this law and these decrees, and not consider himself better than his brothers, and turn from the law to the right or to the left. So, Solomon repeated that, Proverbs 4, 27. And the writer of the Kings repeats it as of a matter of importance to the life of a king. I had an elder one time that was in a Bible class with me in 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And I wasn't relating, I was a young man, I wasn't relating very well to the material in 1st and 2nd Kings and Chronicles, because I thought, I'm never going to be a king. You know? I'm never going to have this kind of power. I'm not going to have these resources and this wealth. I'm not going to be a king. And he said, Ben, you have a kingdom. Maybe small, but you have a kingdom. And in that kingdom, you have some authority. You have some rule. And, you know, he said, you have resources. And the reason God preserved this record for kings is not just to talk about, you know, remote kingdoms of Israel and everything, but it's to get you to think about, what are you doing with your little kingdom? And so I started reading passages like that with my little kingdom in mind. My little household. My little sphere of influence. And how am I doing there? Do I have a copy of the Bible? Do you know where your Bible is? You know, I've had members of the church who say, I've been looking for my Bible. Have you seen my Bible? And they've been looking for weeks for their Bible. They don't know where their Bible is. And I panic when I don't know where my Bible is. And of course, it's easier now, isn't it, to keep up with it because you can have it on your phone. But how often do you tap into that app as opposed to what else you're looking? Like how much time you spend in social media and so forth. This says you read it every day. King, I want you to get this out and read it every day of your life. Because that's how much we need it. That's how much I need it. And I sure like to be around Christians who know their Bible. It's challenging, it's refreshing, it's encouraging, it's convicting. It's just what I need. Okay, let's go back to 2 Kings, and we'll finish up Josiah. Someone asked me last night after class, there are two parts to the armor of Josiah, and I get the breastplate of righteousness, but what about have his feet shod with the gospel of peace? What about that part of Josiah, that part of the armor? When he discovered the law of God, not only did he initiate reforms in Jerusalem and Judea, but he started in the north, in Bethel, in Dan, the two most extreme cities of the north. Now, why is that significant? Huh? It wasn't part of his kingdom. Josiah ruled from 640 to 609 BC. And who was ruling Israel during that time? One of the most ruthless, brutal nations in the world. Who? Assyria. Assyria was ruling then. That wasn't part of his kingdom. It didn't even have his kin up there. Most of the rulers and the good folks have been scattered all over the world. And the only people who were left up there was kind of the poor, what we call rabble, the tenement farmers and so forth, just to take care of the land. And soldiers all over the place, probably from Assyria. And Josiah goes up there and tears down their idols and burns their Asherah poles and goes right into the teeth of their temples to do all of that. Mission. He went on a missionary trip to carry the law of God to those people. And so what are you going to do with Assyria and all the blowback you're going to get? And what are you going to do with that?
Evidently, God took care of that because they weren't. The Bible doesn't mention it.
God took care of it. If Christians are determined to take the gospel, if you and I are determined to take the gospel anywhere, God says, I'll open doors. Don't worry about the obstacles. You just go. Be sure to put your armor on, but go. And so Josiah went. And his reforms were massive. And if you pick up the account in 2 Chronicles 35, when he had that great Passover, that's a wonderful passage to see the first major feast that Josiah inaugurated, guess who showed up for that major feast? People from the north made the trek down to Jerusalem and Judah because of the work that Josiah did. Probably took some priests with him who were faithful to God to teach the people the law of God. And lo and behold, tribes from the north came down to observe the Passover. And when Hezekiah kind of got things started, and the wonderful thing about it is when the people came down to observe the Passover, a lot of them were ignorant of the law, and so they broke the law trying to observe the law. They didn't make themselves clean. They didn't get themselves purified and consecrated, set apart for the Passover. And King Hezekiah saw this happening, and he knew what the law said. And yet here's the people wanting to observe the law, but they were doing it all wrong. And so what did Hezekiah do? He got down on his knees and he prayed for the people. He interceded for them. He said, God, I know and that you know that they're currently breaking your law, trying to keep your law. But I'm asking you to have mercy and go ahead and honor their intentions and heal them. And it says in the text, God healed the people. He listened to the prayer of Hezekiah and he healed the people. Your intentions count. I think Matt had one of the best sermons he's ever preached on that when he talked about what's in your heart. David had it in his heart to build the temple. He just couldn't do it because God forbade him. But God appreciated the fact that he had it in his heart to do it. And so good intentions are not always, the road to hell is not always paved with good intentions. Good intentions count with God. They count. And Hezekiah said, Lord, these people have good intentions. Please honor them. Honor their weak faith and heal them. And he did. Wonderful grace. Okay, now we're going to make this transition to Solomon, and we're going to do it through this passage here in 2 Kings 23. 2 Kings 23. Let's see. Or is it 22? 22, I'm sorry. Well, nope, it's 23. I'll get it here. Verse 12. Speaking of Josiah, he pulled down the altars the kings of Judah had erected on the roof near the upper room of Ahaz, king of Judah, and the altars Manasseh, that's Josiah's grandfather, the most wicked of kings, and the altars Manasseh had built in the two courts of the temple of the Lord. He removed them from there, smashed them to pieces, threw the rubble into the Kedron Valley. The king also desecrated the high places that were east of Jerusalem on the south of the hill of corruption. That was opposite the Mount of Olives. The hill of corruption. Who was responsible for that? The ones Solomon, king of Israel, had built for Ashtoreth, the vile goddess of the Sidonians. What nation was Sidon, the city of Sidon, in? What was that nation called in the Bible? Tyre. That's Tyre. Ezekiel pronounces judgment on them in Ezekiel 28. That passage I suggested that you read for an insight into Satan. Okay, she was this goddess Ashtaroth was the sexual fertility goddess of the Sidonians. Solomon did that. Built an altar and an idol for her. For Chemosh, the vile god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the people of Ammon. And Molech was known for what? Burning babies, child sacrifice. Solomon did that. And look how far it carried forward. How many generations? From the time he did it to the time of Josiah. Hundreds of years. That's some of Solomon's legacy. Now, we have other good parts of Solomon's legacy, don't we? Proverbs, and many of the Proverbs. I believe Ecclesiastes. But Solomon did that. Now, let's go over to 1 Kings and see King Solomon. 1 Kings. We're going to start in chapter 3 of 1 Kings. And before we start, your assignment was to read 1 Kings 1 through 11. What were some of your observations? What were some of the things you noticed about the life of Solomon as you read through this?
Where he had to, his brother was trying to be king. Solomon's brother tried to be the king, make himself the king, and David had promised Solomon to be the king.
Okay, so the first two chapters, there's a lot of political intrigue there, isn't there? Yes. Whenever you change power, whenever you have a shift of power in a country, there's generally always a lot of turmoil. This great country is an exception to what most of the world experiences every time there's a change of power. I mean, we think we got it bad here. I mean, gee. But we're just looking at how power hungry, that some people are. And Satan started that. He said, Adam and Eve, you don't need God to tell you what to do. You be your own God. You decide right from wrong. And James in chapter 4 says that's where all the wars come from in his letter in James 4, 1 and 2. So, we have a lot of political intrigue. That's a good insight. Solomon handles that pretty well, given what they generally did in that day. They didn't wait for people to be rivals. They cut them off at the head before they were. If you had anybody that rivaled your power, before you actually took power, you went and did away with them. You didn't have any enemies when you started your reign. Solomon did. He permitted it. And he let them decide their fate. If you notice the first two chapters. He didn't take any preemptive strikes, so to speak. Okay. Anything else about Solomon that you notice?
He married lots of foreign women, and I think the fact that he married lots of foreign women, it allowed that to corrupt him.
Very good. Okay, chapter 3, look at verse 1. Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married his daughter. That was the practice of that day. Because, if you're the king of Egypt and you feel like Israel might be a threat, you'd say, here, take my daughter. And then once your daughter is installed in his household, you think, well, he's not going to attack me because I'm his father-in-law. and he's got my daughter. And she still has loyalties to me and to, you know. So it was kind of in that day, it was considered to be a wise kind of move. To give your daughter in marriage, to make an alliance.
It was a political move.
Political move. Okay. He brought her to the city of David until he finished building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the walls around Jerusalem.
We just read where he put these places inside the temple of God. It sounded like he did it right there while they were building it.
Well, he brought her. He didn't bring the image of the idol. He just brought her to the... Yeah. But you're right. He ended up bringing her. But then what did she want to bring?
Her gods.
She wanted to bring her God. So Solomon built a temple for her and her God. Because he wanted to what? Please his wife. Now go over to chapter 11 and look at this line. Chapter 11, verse 1. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter. That was the camel sticking his nose in the tent. Was Pharaoh's daughter. And then look what happened. Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. There's a warning in 1 Corinthians 7 about getting married. And I'm pro-marriage. I want to be that clear. 55 years with my wife. But there's still that warning. And do you know what the warning is? What is the warning Paul makes in 1 Corinthians 7? Starting about verse 32.
Is it unequally yoked?
That's 2 Corinthians 6, and that is a warning. Yes, don't be unequally yoked with someone. And that's what Solomon did. Yeah. But the warning in 1 Corinthians 7 is what?
Not to get your priorities mixed up.
Go ahead, what?
Not to get your priorities mixed up. Serve God first.
Yes. In marriage, there's always, he said, a danger of mixing your priorities. He says, because when you get married, you want to please your mate. And sometimes that's not what pleases God. You want to please her. And he says you must be serving the Lord with undivided devotion. So your heart can be pulled one way or the other. Honey, I'm so tired. I don't want to go to church today. Let's sleep in. And then the next Sunday, oh, the kids have got a ball game. Let's go there. And then it just keeps going. One little step, one little degree after the other, where you're trying, because you love someone, you want to please them. That's a sign of love. But sometimes you've got to displease them because you're trying to please the Lord. And that's your intent. The interest of a mate and the interest of the Lord aren't always the same. And that's why you have to stand, as Paul says in Ephesians 6, take your stand and lead. So read that section in 1 Corinthians 7. Paul says, as a matter of fact, the time may come, he says, when those who are married ought to act like they aren't married. I mean, that's almost verbatim what he says there, because he knows tough choices and tough times are coming, and it may be a decision between the mate and the Lord. So he says, put your arm on, be ready. Be ready for that time, because it may happen. And I think that's one of the reasons why Paul was pro-single. He said, I'm a single guy, and I recommend it.
He said he had
I recommend it. But whatever state, of course, he ends up saying, whatever state you're in, if you're married, don't seek to get unmarried. And if you're not married and your desires to be married, go ahead, you haven't sinned. But he says, let me put a warning label on that. I'll put a warning label on it. Because like Solomon, you could be led astray.
Well, that verse that talks about you can't serve two masters, doesn't that fit in there?
Yes.
Serve God and mammon.
Mammon.
Woman.
Yeah.
Either one or husband.
Either one.
How does that go?
Yeah. Can't serve two masters. Matthew 6:24. Okay, so let's go to the rest of this in 1 Kings 3. Where are we? Solomon, in verse 2. The people, however, were still sacrificing at the high places. The Hebrew word bimo, I think is the way you say that. The high place. In that day, pagans thought, if I can get up on a mountain or a hill, I'll get closer to my deity. I'll get closer to my God. And so the mountains were thought to be places of power, because if you went up there, you got close to your God. You know, raise your elevation, get closer. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? No. Because if you read any other of 1 Kings, God says, I'm the God of the mountains and the valleys. You don't have to be on a mountain to get close to me. You know, human beings, without the revelation of God, get to thinking they can localize God, get to thinking in terms of what they call sympathetic magic. You've got this image here, whether it's an idol or a place or something, and you think, that's the place where I can get close to God. And we attach, if we're not careful, we attach too much meaning to place. God's in that place. God is in these beads that I'm wearing. God's in this crucifix. He's in this image here. If I can get close to that image and clutch it and possess it, I can get close to Him. And that's the attraction of idolatry. Or one of them anyway. 1 Kings 3. They were sacrificing at the high places. Deuteronomy 7 says, tear them down. Don't do that. Come to Jerusalem. Come to my temple. Don't go and erect your own holy place. Because it's in His temple where His law was taught. It's in His temple where the priest taught you about the Lord, taught you about the proper sacrifices and so forth.
Wasn't that at that time, even there, wasn't that where the tabernacle was?
Where the what was?
The tabernacle, wasn't it there in that place? Didn't you go to what tabernacle was?
Yeah, in Shiloh, you're talking about, or what? Gibeon was a high place.
Right, but the temple had been built in, and
Right.
the tabernacle was there in Gibeon.
The tabernacle was in Gibeon. Well, you're educating me here. Where is that in the Bible?
I don't know, I read it today somewhere.
Okay, good. I know. I trust you. I'd just like to know where it is, because, all right. It's a high place because the temple had not been built, as Carol pointed out, in the name of the Lord. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the statutes of his father, except that he offered sacrifices and burned incense on the high places. Except. Now, even though the temple had not been built, Solomon, as far as I can tell, did not consult the Lord here about, okay, we don't have a temple, where do I go to worship you? And God had forbidden the high places because of the idolatry associated with it, the misinformation that was there about who he was. So did God shut Solomon out then because he went to the high place to seek him? No. Grace. Grace. Mercy. Solomon, I know what you're doing is at a high place, but I'm going to meet you there. And not only am I going to meet you there, I'm going to bless you beyond your wildest imagination. You know, because are you still working on stuff in your life, sin? Are you still working on compromising certain little things in your life? I am. Does God still meet you? Is his mercy still extended to you while he's working with you? You bet. That's the most amazing thing about to me of God is his patience, his long suffering. He's slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and goodness. How many years did God tolerate idolatry, the idolatry of Solomon, before he lowered the boom and brought judgment? How many years? 400? 500? It wouldn't have taken me a week if I was in charge.
This is spiritual idolatry when you, not idolatry. Adultery. It's spiritual adultery when you offer sacrifices to another god.
Yeah.
And that's what?
Yes. What prophets were active during King Josiah's life? I want you to know this before we leave tonight, because we're almost out of time. What prophets? There were two prophets that were active during Josiah's life. He's mentioned in both of these prophets. Zephaniah. That's one. So read Zephaniah if you want to get a background of what Josiah was dealing with. And who's the other one? This is the prophet who wrote laments about him. This was a prophet who evidently was very close to Josiah. Jeremiah. And if you'll read the first 4 chapters of Jeremiah, you're going to get a picture of what Josiah was dealing with his people, trying to get them back to God and reformed. What was going on in their hearts? Jeremiah is the prophet of the heart. And if you want to get your heart right with God, read Jeremiah. Study Jeremiah. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick, wicked. And I, the Lord, test the heart to know what is in man. That's the 17th chapter of Jeremiah. So I wanted to make that point about Josiah before you left, because Jeremiah's prophecy started 1 year into Josiah's reforms. That's when God called Jeremiah. 1 year into Josiah starting the reforms. And Jeremiah was a what? As far as age is concerned? In fact, he raised that as an objection. He says, God, you can't use me. You can't give me this task because I am only a youth, just like Josiah. I'm a young whippersnapper. I'm not up to this.
Just goes to show God can use anybody.
That's right. Okay, we're out of time. We're going to finish Solomon, and then we're looking at King Jesus. We're going to get some good news. About time, isn't it? Matthew 4 and Luke 4, read the temptation accounts in those two sections for tomorrow night. And we'll cover those and wrap it up. Thank you for coming. God bless you.